Hi everyone and welcome to Beyond the Grid, presented by the new Bose noise-cancelling headphones 700. It's Tom Clarkson here, and I'm trying to think how best to describe this week's guest. When I asked him to introduce the podcast himself, as I do with all of our guests, he told me that was my job. So here I am, trying to think up a description that does the man justice. To many people, he's the godfather of Formula One. He transformed the sport from being the indulgence of rich amateurs in the 50s into the global phenomenon that it is today, watched by hundreds of millions of people on television. I'm talking, of course, about the incomparable Bernie Ecclestone. Bernie's career in Formula One has been a long one. Believe it or not, he actually tried to qualify for a couple of Grand Prix in 1958, before then transferring his energies into driver management. First, he worked with British racer Stuart Lewis-Evans, and then with 1970 world champion Jochen Rindt. But tragically, both men would die after accidents behind the wheel. But Bernie's love affair with racing continued. He eventually bought the Brabham team in 1972 and led them to World Championship glory. And it was during this period that his career went stratospheric. Before long, he was negotiating with race promoters on behalf of the teams, and a stupidly short amount of time later, he was running the sport in its entirety, something he did for 40 years until it was bought by Liberty Media in 2017. Bernie ruled F1 with a rod of iron. There were many controversies along the way, and whether you agreed or disagreed with him, one thing was unequivocal: he kept everyone on their toes. Now in his 90th year, Bernie's in rude health, and we caught up recently in London after he'd returned from a prolonged stay on his coffee farm in Brazil. I won't lie to you, he isn't always the easiest to extract information from, but he's always great company, and you never know what he's going to say next. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, Bernie, welcome to Beyond the Grid. It's lovely to have you on the show. We're at Prince's Gate in London, an address that for so long was the global HQ of Formula One. What goes on in here now? Who passes through these doors?
We don't have any passes for anything. We're completely open and free. I just do all sorts of things now. Things that I would have probably never dreamt of doing before, because I'm spending a lot of time that's not producing too much. But I'm trying to help people. A lot of people come and ask me different things. What do I think of this? What would I do if I was them? And those sort of things. I try and help people whenever I can.
Would you say you're enjoying life after Formula One?
I'm enjoying myself doing all the things that perhaps I should have spent more time doing a few years ago and didn't bother with. I don't I used to be very disciplined with myself and make sure that I was doing every single thing that I had to do and tick boxes to make sure I did. And nowadays I don't do that. I do what I think I'd be happy doing.
Bernie, can you give us any examples of what you're doing now? People would love to know.
Well, I've been travelling a lot. We have a coffee farm in Brazil, which takes a little bit of looking after. I've got building projects in Switzerland, where basically I'm spending a bit more time now than I used to. I mean, I would have spent more time there anyway, but it wasn't very practical when I was sort of looking after things in Formula One. I mean, this is the base of Formula One England. It's where most of the teams are. Most of the promoters know where we are and pop in and see me and things like that.
Bernie, tell us a little bit about the coffee farm in Brazil. Can we buy the coffee in England, for example?
Yep.
Where can we? What's it called?
Celebrity Coffee.
Uh-huh.
They stock it in Partridge's, a shop in the King's Road, and other different places. My wife looks after this much more than me. I look after the more practical side.
Are you enjoying life as a farmer? Is that what we call it?
Sure. We have about 800 cows, and some horses and things. So it's...
What breed of cattle have you got over there?
The typical Brazilian. Unfortunately, they don't produce milk. They're there for people to take away and kill and sell the meat. Mm. I've said that's why we got as many cattle now from the last sort of 5 or 6 years, because they won't send them away to be killed. I said, if they're going to die, they can die here. Mm. They're not dying in the slaughterhouse. So I won't sell them.
And how much time are you spending over there in Brazil?
Probably I suppose in total, a couple of months a year.
So look, what about Formula One? Do you keep in touch with Formula One in terms of what's happening on track? How closely do you follow it now?
Well, I'm still friends and close to a lot of the teams and the promoters. So that's basically now still the biggest part of my time. That's what I do.
And you know, you're saying people ring you up for advice. Is that current Formula One people?
Nothing this morning, but late yesterday, yes.
Oh, God, pray tell. Now, do you miss running Formula One, Bernie? Do you miss the adrenaline? Do you miss the deals? Do you miss the profile?
No, I suppose what I really miss is discovering new countries where we could put Formula One, where they were happy with it and we were happy with whatever business we could do there.
Would you say Malaysia was the first one of those back in 1999, of the new countries?
Well, I mean, I've been trying in China for a long time before that. So Singapore, before we got that race off the deck, I've been messing around there for 25 years.
What was the catalyst to getting that deal over the line?
No, I knew Mr. Ong, the guy that sort of runs things there now. And because of his friendship with Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, I went to see him. And that's what happened. We decided that Singapore should have a Formula One race.
Was it always going to be a night race?
No.
Whose idea was that?
Mine, unfortunately. It cost them a lot of money to do.
Now, Bernie, how do you reflect on your time in charge of Formula One? Obviously, you brought it to new territories, which you've just talked about, but when you look at it as a whole, how do you look back at it?
Well, I don't understand the question, really.
Are you proud of what you achieved?
No. I was doing a job. Simple.
Well, when you look at the sport now, is it what you envisaged 40 years ago? When you first bought Brabham in 1972 and you were thinking, okay, I'm now a team owner, where's the sport going? Is this what you envisaged back then?
No, not at all.
What did you see back then?
I think we just continued looking. I looked for improvements that I thought it could be made and try to make them. So there was no plans.
Sort of reacting in a way to what was going on.
I never had any plans to do anything. When opportunities arose, if I thought they were going to be good, that's what I grabbed hold of them and tried to do something about it.
And was TV clearly the main thing for you?
Most important. Sure was.
Because as a team owner, was it frustrating that there wasn't more TV, more cohesive TV, if you like? Because it was all race by race back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the broadcasters could do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it, which I thought wasn't really the best way for us, which it obviously wasn't. So, I mean, it was all dealt with by EBU in Europe those days, and they were the ones that really controlled things. They did a first-class job, never had any problems, except they didn't want to be told what they should do. In fact, they told me, I said, well, we're going to have to do something about it. And they said, well, you won't be able to because you're finishing and have no broadcast at all. I said, really? They said, yeah. And they said, you should know this because you're in England and the BBC will never, ever, ever do what you're asking them to do. I said, well, we'll have to see.
How did those negotiations with the BBC go?
They were the first people to do it, actually. Because they could see it was the best thing for them.
What do you think has been Formula One's magic ingredient that's made it such a global phenomenon?
I think Ferrari's got a lot to do with making Formula One what it is today. They were there from the start. It's a magic name. You ask anybody about motor racing and they will obviously include Ferrari as being the people.
And they were always central to
exactly
all the deals you were doing. And
well, I kept closely in touch with Mr. Ferrari in the old days. Well, it wasn't difficult and it wasn't easy. He didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Italian. So we always had to have somebody with us. sort of helping a little bit. But he was very, very positive and very helpful.
What kind of a man was he?
Really, really, really nice guy. I mean, when we had the so-called war with the manufacturers, supposed to be, and he was outwardly sort of against me or whatever, but we were very close. And I didn't care what he said, and he didn't care what I said,
Do you think you were cut from the same cloth? Do you think you were quite similar people, you and Enzo?
He was a used car dealer.
Right, okay. Well, look, Bernie, can we wind the clock back now? What drew you to motorsport in the first place? I'm talking 50 years ago.
Well, I was also sort of getting involved in racing. I used to race push bikes and then motorcycles and then turned into cars.
So it was driving / riding. It was that aspect of sport.
Being competitive, I think. I've always been a little bit competitive.
Were you a sportsman in your youth? Did you do other sports?
No, I kept away from that. No, I didn't. The answer is no.
Can I ask you about the two Grand Prix that you contested, if that's right, or tried to contest, or tried to qualify for in 58 in the Connaught, Monaco and Silverstone? Memories of those two races? Or qualifying sessions?
Not the good thing to remember, actually. I mean, those days in Monaco, there were 16 starters and probably 28 people trying to qualify. And most of the people were more serious about the racing than I was. So I didn't get the job done. Just that easy.
But did you enjoy the adrenaline rush of racing back then?
No, I think if you're a competitive person, no matter what you're competing in or whatever it is, you try and do the best you can. And that's what happened.
So was it very frustrating that you didn't qualify for those races? Or are you the sort of guy that just turns the page and...
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
didn't affect me at all.
And of course, at that time, you were also working with Stuart Lewis-Evans. What were you doing for him?
No, I just used to travel with Stuart and try and help him with different things, making sure he got in the good teams.
In the Van All?
Exactly.
Were you sort of doing sponsorship deals for him, or was it less
not so
formal
much, not with Stuart. Yeah, those days, I don't think we knew about sponsors.
There wasn't much on the cars, was there? Let's say.
It didn't used to happen.
Few tyre sponsors, few oil sponsors, that was it, wasn't it?
Well, maybe. I mean, when I was racing a car, I had a sponsorship with Shell. Myself, there was 100 of us. 10 of us that had a sponsorship.
And was that just free fuel and lubes, or was it actually, did money change hands?
Yeah, money changed hands. Yeah. Those days, Sterling Moss and I had contracts with these people.
Well, what a way to close off the 2019 Formula One season in Abu Dhabi. Lewis Hamilton, the new 6-time champion, dominated from the front, and there were plenty of thrilling battles up and down the order, not least that tremendous drive by Carlos Sainz to seal 6th in the drivers' standings. And thanks to Amazon Web Services, we could feel closer to the action than ever before. That's because F1 uses machine learning and predictive modelling built on AWS to create critical race performance statistics, make race predictions, and give fans deeper insight into the split-second decisions made by teams and drivers, and is able to share these insights over television and digital platforms all over the world. Some of the most exciting racing action comes from driver battles when a chasing driver gets close enough to attempt an overtake. The AWS Battle Forecast analyses track history and projected driver pace to provide an insight into developing driver battles during the race, all of which might not be so obvious to the eye. Pit Strategy Battle provides real-time insight on the position of the two rival drivers, the predicted gap after their pit stops, and percentage chance of overtaking, while Tyre Performance gives an indication of tyre wear on a performance scale, highlighting the relative degradation between two cars in a battle, and it's all powered by AWS's incredible machine learning and data analytics. So next time you're watching a race and wondering how they get all those awesome insights, just remember, AWS is how. Find out more at aws.com/F1insights. That's aws.com/F1insights. Right, let's go back to the man who can provide us with another valuable insight into the sport. So, the Moroccan Grand Prix of 58, when Stuart had his accident, was very badly burned, and then died a few days later. How did that affect your love of motorsport? What happened?
I think when things like that happen, I think you more or less switch off, because it's something that's been happening sort of every day, every week, and then suddenly it doesn't happen anymore. So you sort of regretfully forget it.
But was that the first time something like that had happened to someone who, would you call Stuart a friend? Did that make it different?
No, he's a very close friend. Yeah.
And that didn't make it any different? You just, in terms of the impact it had on you?
No, I mean, there's nothing I could do about it. I mean, it was terrible the way he was dealt with in the hospital in Casablanca. It was everything was bad up until the day he died.
Were you the person pushing to get him back to England as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
Mm. What about the other drivers of the time? Who impressed you and why? Who stood out?
Well, I think as there wasn't so much publicity, people writing and doing what we're doing, I don't think you'd have to sort of admire somebody and follow somebody to sort of get it really connected.
And who on that grid in the 50s did you feel you connected with?
Well, Stuart, obviously, and Jochen Rindt, obviously. Jochen, because we were sort of a little bit partners in different things. We used to run a Formula 2 team for Lotus.
Well, we'll come on to Jochen, but just in the 50s, did you have any contact with Fangio, or was Sterling Moss a charm, if that's the right way to put it?
I mean, people were much more close and friendly with each other. As you say, people like Fangio, people like that. Gonzalez was a good friend of mine. Those sort of people, they don't exist today in the way they used to. Not saying they were better or worse, it was just different.
Okay, so what happened between 58 and then you getting involved with Jochen? It seems from the outside that you took a step back from the sport. Is that true?
I suppose. I mean, don't forget I was still running a business when all this was going on. So, I mean, this was a hobby.
The motorcycle business?
Well, cars and motorcycles.
Okay. So racing was just a hobby. And then how did you come into contact with Jochen Rindt?
Because I knew a guy called Roy Salvadori. And then Roy was starting to run Cooper, and then Jochen was there.
What, the moment you saw Jochen drive, you realised he was something special?
Yeah.
But what made him special, Bernie?
I mean, if you like to say what makes... I suppose you've got to say that Lewis is special today. What makes him special? Just bloody quick.
Yes. Simple as that. The ingredients haven't changed, and Jochen was just bloody quick.
Yeah.
Okay, but on a personal level, how different was your relationship with him to how it had been with any other drivers, Stuart or anyone else?
Do you know, we just got on very, very well together. And we used to play gin rummy, and, we just got on well. We were just good friends. And then when we got there, Colin Chapman asked me if we could run this Formula 2 team with Graham Hill and Jochen. That's what we did.
So that was your first foray into running a team ownership. Was that something that you were keen to do, or had you actively sought to get involved in running a team? Or
yeah, I intended to do that. Jochen and I that was our intention, to have a Formula 1 team.
Do you think Jochen was looking beyond retirement, or did he want to race for his own team?
He wasn't looking at that. I mean, it was a case that would have been a year probably after he died, we would have been running a team. So when I bought Connaught, that was the intention.
And so, Bernie, can you remember how you felt when Jochen was crowned world champion posthumously? Was his death at Monza any different to anyone else's because of the relationship you had with him? Or again, was it turn the page?
I mean, it certainly was different, for sure, because we were very close, so it was different. So say those days, Everything was different. Like when the accident happened with Colin Chapman there, and the police in Italy wanted to get hold of him and arrest him and do all the silly things they do, and getting him out the country to make sure he was safe, and then looking after things there for Jochen. So the whole series everything was different. And so you become much closer with people when there's a bit of tragedy. We couldn't have been any closer than we were, but, you sort of felt more. So that's when I decided then we give it a miss for a little while. Not for a little while, but then it was just give it a miss.
And 50 years on, when you think of Jochen, is there a particular moment, a particular image that you think of which puts a smile on your face?
No, it was millions of things we did together, so to pick one out would be impossible.
For people listening who didn't know Jochen Rindt, was he funny? Is there anything, can you just give us any anecdote or anything that just sums up Jochen's character? Because all the pictures I've seen of him are he looked like he had a really cheeky grin. I don't know if that's fair or not, but was he quite cheeky?
He was really, I suppose, on reflection, a bit of a practical joker.
Oh, God. The first of the practical jokers. What kind of stuff did he do?
Well, I didn't ski or do anything in those days. And he was a very good skier. And he took me in a helicopter, landed very high up in a mountain for skiing, and sort of explained to me how to get out, complete with the skis, and just disappeared. The helicopter just went, and I'm standing there with skis, which I didn't know what to do with, in a lot of snow, in not very good weather. And off went the helicopter with no, I'll be back soon or whatever. So that was the sort of thing he was going to do.
What happened next? You've got to tell us.
No, he came back, obviously. Collected with them. But I mean, they're the sort of things that...
Were you worried at one point?
Not really. Nothing much to worry about.
Yeah. Wow. He sounds a very special guy. But Bernie, was it...
And we used to, a good example with him, Colin Chapman had designed a car that Jochen wasn't particularly excited about. So they had a big argument. And what used to happen, we went to a race, both Colin and him would be in the same hotel, but they wouldn't be talking to each other. So Colin would call me, I'd be in England, Colin would call me and say something, say to Jochen, then I'd tell Jochen, and Jochen would tell him this. And this used to go on all the time. And that's how things happened, or didn't happen. And that was more, he was very straightforward with things. And if he didn't like things, he'd tell you straightforward,
Was his accident at Monza the first time that you sort of woke up and thought, we need to do something about safety?
Not really. I don't know when that happened. Sid Watkins was the guy who used to look after things for us. We sat down one day and we were talking about things in general and said, we ought to get something done about this. It's all a little bit crazy. And then I said, well, like what? He said, it would be nice to have some facilities at a race meeting. So I got really stuck into that.
But what triggered that first conversation with Sid? Because it was 1978, right, that Sid first sort of acted on what you'd asked of him.
I don't remember when it was. I don't remember the date. Might have been, I don't know whether it was Ronnie Peterson when he died.
At Monza in 78.
Yeah, whether that started, I don't remember.
But did you know Sid socially or?
No.
Okay,
I just knew him well because he used to be at all the races.
Yeah.
I got him into that in the first place with somebody from the RAC, I think, suggested he would be a good person to have with us. So I contacted him and got him on board.
Huge progress made in safety, but why is it that you and Sid got on so well, do you think?
I have no idea.
Worked so well together, perhaps?
I don't know. No idea. Well, I suppose in the end, we both wanted something to happen. And so we had to try and make it. And Sid knew that he could rely on me, that if we come up with an idea, one way or another, I'd make it work. Mm-hmm. He started the air ambulance thing that runs now in London. And we started that together.
Wow. A couple of other drivers I wanted to ask you about. First of all, Niki Lauda. Tragically, we lost Niki earlier this year. How do you remember him?
I think when somebody is like those type of people, like Niki, for example, easy to get on with, somebody you could rely on, somebody you could trust, and somebody that wasn't trying to do evil things behind your back and trying to be helpful always. They don't sort of come that often. So you remember them for all those things.
How quick was he?
He was quick. Probably not the quickest every day, but when he had to be quick, he was quick.
How difficult was it to lure him away from Ferrari, or it seems that he'd fallen out with Ferrari, so was he ripe for the picking?
We met in Monza, outside the circuit, and he was a little upset. I mean, we were good friends before that, and he was a bit upset with Ferrari in general. And that's when I said he should join us at Brabham. He was the first guy to get $1 million contract. That wasn't what made him leave Ferrari, but it helped a little bit.
And Bernie, how much did it pain you to pay drivers? Because they're all doing something that they probably do for free because they love it. So to write out a check to Niki Lauda for $1 million to drive your car, which in 78, we'll come on to the fan car in a minute, but how painful was that for you?
It wasn't painful at all because he had a sponsor at the time that was happy to keep him happy and in a team that they thought would be winning the race, called Parmalat. And so we took Parmalat with Niki.
Oh, okay. So actually,
it was.
You didn't have to write the check out.
We still had to write the check but it was easier.
That's wonderful. And then when Niki just said, "I've had enough."
When Niki said that?
Yeah, when Niki said, "I've had enough. I want to retire."
It was in Canada.
What was your reaction?
Well, we then had a Ford engine, TFE engine, because Nick had suffered with this with another engine. And Nelson was in the other car and was obviously quicker than Niki. And I think Niki was probably a bit surprised with that and surprised how quick the car was. So he decided, when he came to me, he said, we were starting to talk about contracts. He said, well, I'm going to stop at the end of the year. I said, why? He said, well, I've just had enough. I'm going to stop. So I said, well, if you're going to stop, you better stop now. Because the last thing you should be doing is thinking of stopping, then again today, continuing, maybe have an accident, and then be in big trouble for the rest of your life thinking I should have stopped before, and you didn't. So I said, the best thing you can do is go now. He said, what do you mean go now? I said, like now. I said, I'll continue. I'll pay you to the end of the year. Exactly right. Our contract's the same. But you go. And he went.
Tell me how extraordinary it was. So it's your idea. Your idea for him to...
Yeah. It wasn't my idea that he should leave. It was his idea that he was going to stop. It was my idea he should stop then and not, hang around.
If you're not 100...
I never had anybody else to drive.
So if you're not 100% committed, may as well not do it.
Well, no, it would be bad. Imagine he had continued, had an accident, couldn't walk anymore because of the accident, for example, and thinking to himself, I was going to stop. I didn't.
Who was the fastest driver that ever drove for you at Brabham?
Oof. They were all much of a muchness, really, I think. I wouldn't say one of them was the quickest.
Okay, Bernie, you're coming back. Brabham is coming back to Formula One. Age isn't a barrier. You're allowed one of the drivers that drove for you.
Nelson Piquet.
Why Nelson?
We got on well together. He was quick and liked by the team. Everybody liked. He is and was a good guy.
Another practical joker as well, right?
Yes, exactly right.
There seems to be a theme here. The drivers that get on with Mr. E are all practical jokers, no?
I mean, obviously, would I have said Niki, or why didn't I say Niki? I think Nelson was perhaps a little easier to handle than Niki, in as far as Niki knew what he wanted and couldn't be persuaded that he was wrong. Whereas with Nelson, maybe you could talk to him.
And do you think someone like Reutemann, do you feel you got the full potential out of Carlos Reutemann?
I don't think anybody did. I think Carlos was much more talented than was seen. I mean, he would give you a very good example with him. If he went over, in those days there wasn't curbs, but if he damaged a wheel even, he'd be upset. If he really upset, he'd done anything that would damage the car. He was very careful and caring.
Isn't that music to your ears as a team boss, though?
Yeah, exactly.
Keeps it cheap. Yeah. But he was very quick.
Yeah, he was quick. Again, probably much quicker than we ever saw.
We'll be back with Bernie in just a minute. But first this. Prepare for a racing experience unlike anything seen in-game before, as the biggest motorsport in the world meets the #1 racing simulation game on mobile. Formula One comes to Real Racing 3. It doesn't matter whether you're a Vettel, Hamilton, Verstappen or Bottas fan, because in this game, you have the choice of stepping into the shoes, or gloves I should say, of all 20 drivers across all 10 teams, and taking your racing skills to 5 of the official Grand Prix tracks. All culminating in one ultimate experience that you can play anytime, anywhere, directly on your mobile device. So you've got the best of the racing world right there in your pocket, which means that bus or train journey home from work might just whiz by a little bit quicker if you're going flat out around Yas Marina circuit instead of staring out the window. Real cars, real tracks, real people, Real Racing 3, the definitive racing experience. Real Racing 3 is available on the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and Amazon App Store for your mobile device. Right, let's get back into it with Bernie. Another driver, Senna, Ayrton Senna. First of all, can you describe your relationship with him?
Well, we were just friends, that's all. I went to stay with him in his house in Brazil and things like that. We were good friends.
Were you instrumental in getting him into McLaren in 88, for example, or Williams in 94?
Perhaps a little bit more with Williams. Brabham maybe was the first time he'd sat in a Formula One car.
When he tested for you?
In Ricard.
At Ricard, yeah.
Yeah.
Or was it Williams, actually? Maybe he did a run for Frank at Donington, did he? But they were at roughly the same time, certainly.
I don't remember.
Were you at that Ricard test when Ayrton drove the Brabham?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you remember the impact he made on you?
Yeah, I mean, he was... You could see then what he was going to become. He took the car out just to run to see how it all was. And I think it was Charlie Whiting that said to me, Christ, we should have done something with the front dampers or something like that. Whatever it was, it's like that. So I said, well, what effect that will have? He said, well, he won't know anyway. He won't notice it. But, yeah. And Ayrton did another lap, came in and stopped, spoke to Charlie and told Charlie what was wrong with the car. So
amazing, yeah.
So a useful sort of a guy. And we never took him because at the time, I think that was the time we had Nelson. And Nelson wasn't too happy with him. He called him a taxi driver.
There was always a bit of an edge between those two Brazilians, wasn't there?
And the difference is Nelson had spoken to our sponsor at the time and said we shouldn't have him because it would be nothing but trouble in the team and he's not quick anyway. So the sponsor said we shouldn't have two Brazilians together, really. It'd be wrong. So that's what happened. So we didn't take him.
Did that annoy you that Piquet had gone behind your back effectively?
Not, I suppose not really, because we didn't know how good Ayrton was. We knew he was bright, but we didn't know how bright and how good. So I thought it'd be good to have two Brazilian drivers.
That wouldn't have been an issue for Brabham?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
For me, it would have been not one bit.
What do you think Senna did for Formula One as a whole, in terms of his charisma, his speed? Do you feel he sort of lifted the sport in any way?
Well, I think what happened, he lifted the sport more after his accident than before. Before, I mean, he was one of the top drivers, but not in the way afterwards, because he had a big following in Japan, which was quite surprising. And it was because of that, and he's following more or less everywhere, I suppose. He's just a nice person.
Did you get dragged into the controversy after Suzuka 89 and then Suzuka 90 as well, when Ayrton and Alain Prost were...
Prost.
Yeah. Did you get dragged into that controversy? Did you...
Very much so.
Yeah. Looking back now, who's right, who's wrong? Do you have any thoughts?
I think with all these things, you make a reason for somebody being right or wrong that you sort of like more than the other person. So you make excuse. You don't really look at it, standing back and seeing what actually happened.
Do you think Ayrton's intensity might have occasionally led him down the wrong path, in that he would have such a belief and such an intense belief that he was right, that sometimes...
Well, I think he thought he couldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
Not that he was right.
That he just couldn't... Yeah. Yeah. So it's 25 years since his accident at Imola, which you mentioned. When you look back at that weekend, what emotions are triggered in you now? What's the overriding thought?
Well, it was all, for me, it was a bad weekend, obviously. But I'd been into the control tower when obviously he was missing, hadn't come round. And I spoke to Sid Watkins, who was at the accident. And I said to Sid, what's actually happened? And he said, his head. I thought he said he's dead. We're on a walkie-talkie. So I walked out the control tower, and his brother came to me, and I said, I'm sorry. I said, he's dead. And obviously his brother was upset, like everyone was upset. And I disappeared from the circuit. And I think after that, at the funeral, I never went. My ex-wife was very close to him, went to the funeral, actually with the mayor of Sao Paulo at the time. And I stayed in the hotel looking on television what was going on at the funeral. I never went to the funeral because I thought, the family thought I was being callous when I told his brother he was dead, when he wasn't. Now, whether he was or whether he wasn't at the time, I don't know. Got a sinking feeling he might have been dead anyway. Clinically dead, sort of thing.
So you travelled to Brazil, but didn't actually attend?
No.
Do you regret now that you didn't attend the funeral?
No. No. I don't go to funerals. Would I have gone to I intended to go to the funeral. But now I don't.
So you think Ayrton Senna's death brought Formula One to the attention of people who might not have been Formula One fans before? Is that why you say he
absolutely
did more? So was there a spike in interest, do you think, immediately after that?
Because it was really probably the first time that generally news worldwide had got out about this, which was quite surprising that, somebody got killed the same weekend and nobody mentioned it.
And so the aftermath of Senna's accident, obviously there were safety improvements were made, but in the immediate aftermath, Williams were left without a lead driver. Can you describe what happened next? Because Nigel Mansell was racing in IndyCar at the time. What happened next?
It was more for Williams than for me. Obviously, I wanted to make sure we had another. There wasn't going to be another Senna. Let's see what we can do.
So how quickly did tell us about the dealing with Nigel, because obviously he had a contract with Newman Haas and he was racing in America. And which was the first race? Was it the French Grand Prix, the first race that Nigel came over for? But how difficult was it to get him in the car?
Well, for him personally, it was never a problem. It was a case with the people that we had to convince they should let him go was the problem. But it wasn't a problem. It was a financial problem. That's all. So we come up with what was necessary and made it all happen.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that era. Final driver, really, I wanted to talk to you about from then is Michael Schumacher. You always seem to get on very well with Michael. Backgammon. Was he a regular backgammon partner? Rival?
No, he wasn't a rival.
Because you could beat him? Or
He was just fun to play with.
But were you tight with Michael? Is Michael a friend, and was he one of the drivers that you've been closer to?
Yeah. Another super talented guy and a nice person.
What did you admire about him in a racing car?
I think that the way he sort of looked at life in general, that was something perhaps a little different those days. I don't think I really don't know. I mean, whether or not he was that interested in the glory or just interested in racing and winning.
He was certainly well paid, wasn't he? It was sort of, if Niki got the first $1 million contract with you at Brabham, Michael, I remember everyone sort of aghast at the amount he was being paid by Ferrari. How involved were you in getting him to Ferrari?
I don't know. I used to get involved in almost everything. I don't know in details exactly what I had to do.
Bernie, that's a fascinating thing in that was there a period of time when it was all a chess game to you and you were placing drivers in teams and even technical people in teams? Did you ever get involved to that level?
No, I think it was a case of sometimes the teams wouldn't know how to approach someone. So if I got a little bit involved because I knew the team very well and I knew the people involved that they wanted, it was easier for me to discuss someone than it is for the person to discuss himself with the team. So that's what used to happen.
And by the mid-90s, were we at a point where Ferrari needed to win again? You've already told us that Ferrari have been integral to the growth of Formula One and the importance. Yep. So were you sitting there in the mid-90s going, I've got to do something to help this team win. They hadn't won the title since Jody Scheckter in 79. And you saw Michael as the missing piece almost.
I mean, there was a lot of missing pieces at Ferrari then. And that's at the time when I managed to convince Jean Todt to go to Ferrari. Because they needed someone to lead the team that, in my opinion, wasn't Italian. So I had a little bit of a problem at the time convincing the people above Ferrari that they ought to get someone.
Why was it important to have a non-Italian running that team?
Because I think with the Italians, you've got a lot of people in charge and nobody in charge. And I think in the case, Jean Todt had been successful in doing other things with his rally. And I thought he's the sort of guy that can do this, which he did. And he became very, very close with Michael. And between them, I suppose, in fact, I asked Michael once, who's running Ferrari now? He said, I am. And that was about the truth. And Jean was clever enough to realize how important he was and let him get on with it.
And did you, as the big boss, get frustrated that in 96 the car wasn't any good, but then in 97 they get to the last race and then Villeneuve pips them. 98 it goes down to the last race, Mika Häkkinen beats them. 99 Michael breaks his leg at Silverstone. I know that there was a lot of frustration within Ferrari at the time. Was there a little bit of frustration from you as well, or not really?
Yeah, but you don't like to see these things. You don't want them to happen. Really and truly, I've always said the right thing to do is the race should be run the last corner of the last lap of the race. And that's what, people said this last race we had in Brazil, it was fantastic. It wasn't a good race, actually. But the last 15 minutes was fantastic because no one knew what was going on. No one knew who could win, and that's what people want.
So have you always been someone who sees a race as a chess match? You can have a brilliant Grand Prix that has maybe only one overtaking maneuver in it at the front, or do you need lots of overtaking to make a good race?
No. I mean, what you really need is a wet race. If it could rain every race, it'd be great.
Do you remember all the talk about sprinkler systems back in the day? Yes. Bring it on.
A little bit cranky, but probably would have worked.
Yeah. Now, Bernie, we mentioned earlier, we talked a little bit about Brabham already, but I just wanted a couple of specific questions about it. Why did you buy Brabham in 1972?
Well, I decided I was going to retire from business and travel a little bit. And Brabham was for sale. Well, at least I thought it could be bought, even if it wasn't for sale. So that's what happened. So I decided and tried to buy it.
So you could indulge a bit of travel with a bit of sport?
I didn't know quite what I was going to do. I mean, I was obviously like racing, and that's what I would have followed, racing a bit more. Maybe not as close as I got to with Brabham, obviously.
Did you already have your eyes on running the sport?
No. No, that was an accident.
You weren't thinking, hang on, for
Not
me...
at all.
Okay. I need to own a team to get the teams together and then...
No. I didn't know and didn't care. Nothing, It wasn't until I got involved a little bit, had a meeting with the teams, and one or two things took place which I got a little bit control of. And people said, well, would I continue doing this thing and running things for them?
How quickly did that happen? So you buy Brabham in 72. How quickly did the other team say, Bernie, please help us?
I was quite quick, I think. They never had another used car dealer.
Enzo?
Yeah.
It's you and Enzo Ferrari.
Pity didn't speak good English.
Yeah.
And he'd have been running things.
But it really was a happy coincidence. It wasn't you plotting.
Absolutely.
So what was top of the job list when...
I think there was two other guys that were doing bits and pieces badly. And that's why if somebody looked as if they could do it better, that's what happened.
And was the moment that running the sport became more important than running a team, was there one moment where you thought, this is what I want to do? And I'm thinking of Anderstorp 78.
With the fan car?
With the fan car. Because you knew going into that race how blindingly quick it was going to be, and yet you volunteered to withdraw that car afterwards. Why?
Because Colin Chapman said to me, what's going to happen? We're all going to have to build this sort of car. Going to cost us quite a bit of money to do it. And we'd be back to where we are now. So it's really not a big advantage. You're going to win a couple of races before we get together. Because those days, it would have taken probably 2 or 3 months for somebody to change their car.
Niki said once that he would have won the championship in 78.
Yeah.
So you gave up a championship.
Niki wasn't happy. Gordon wasn't happy. In fact, nobody was happy that I withdrew the car. Because that's what would have happened. We would have won the championship easy.
And it was more important to you to keep unity among the teams than it was to win the 78 championship.
Absolutely.
Do tell me the discussion with Gordon Murray, who'd been sweating blood to create this amazing car. How did you explain your thoughts to Gordon?
Why? Just the facts. That's what would have happened. I said to him, maybe we didn't know we was going to win the championship then that easy. I said, well, maybe everything will go well and maybe they won't. In the meantime, we've upset everything and may not have succeeded in what we wanted to do.
Was Gordon Murray the best designer of that era? Would you have placed him above the Chapmans and the...
I think Gordon was sort of a bit like Colin. He's prepared to hang it out and do things that others maybe wouldn't have done.
And partly because you gave him the free rein to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he must have, I'm guessing, did he come to you and say, Bernie, I've got this amazing idea of a fan. It's going to work like this. Can I do it? And you must have obviously said yes, whereas other people may have said no because of the cost.
I supported Gordon completely. If he'd come up with ideas, I'd support them.
How much of a racer were you back then?
In the Brabham days?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah.
Well, the same as I am now, I suppose.
But if you didn't win a race that perhaps you could have done, did it pain you, or did you just move? No.
I mean, I remember one race, we'd sold a car to someone. which we never normally had done. And at Watkins Glen, we were first, second, and the customer car was third. And then sort of halfway through the race, I left. So...
What? Why?
I couldn't do anymore. I wasn't driving the car. So the people that were driving the car, the team were there looking after it. Today, I mean, it's a little bit different. I mean, nobody gave orders to the team and things like that, or to the driver. So what can you do? You sit there and hope it doesn't stop.
But just the satisfaction of a job well done as the cars cross the line?
Yeah. I hadn't crossed the line when I left.
No, I know, but we wouldn't want to stay and watch them, and no.
No, I knew when I got to the airport what had happened. We'd won the race, I was happy.
And who would phone with the news? Was there sort of a particular system?
I think I must have phoned somebody.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have bothered to phone me because they probably thought, I wouldn't be that excited anyway.
With Christmas creeping ever closer, I thought I'd let you know about how you could bring part of Formula One history either straight to your doorstep or as a gift for that avid fan in your life. Thanks to F1 Authentics, you can find timeless, unique, and original memorabilia that brings your favourite sport from the racetrack straight to your door. From Fernando Alonso's race-worn overalls in 2007 to a Mercedes AMG Petronas Motorsport team front-wheel rim turned drinks table, there's a Christmas gift for every Formula One fan. Or even as a treat for yourself. Why not? With a wide variety of memorabilia on offer, no matter what your budget, you're sure to find something you love. A majority of products start at only £1, with brand new products added every day. And if you've still got time to get everything on your Christmas list, then you can bid to get the best price for your item. Or if you want to know that gift is definitely yours, make sure you hit the Buy Now button. One of the many great products that has caught my eye is a Lewis Hamilton 2019 mini helmet. This year marks such a historic moment in the sport, with Lewis claiming his 6th title, and the mini helmet is the perfect way to celebrate. All products come direct from the official F1 teams, drivers, suppliers and partners, so you'll never be disappointed with fake items that you might see elsewhere online. So what are you waiting for? Get in the driver's seat and bag your favourite authentic memorabilia from Formula One's official online shop. Visit www.f1authentics.com and become the owner of a piece of Formula One racing history. Right, let's get back to Bernie. Well, so Bernie, you go from the sort of the different eras of Bernie Ecclestone's Formula One career, but you go from, you sell Brabham in, 88 to Joachim Lotti? Was it 88? Yeah. And then obviously things change very quickly in terms of the sport changes very quickly. I wanted to ask you.
I didn't sell to, I sold to Alfa Romeo.
You sold Brabham to Alfa Romeo? Oh, you've just kicked me under the table. Did you?
And then it was sold to Mr. Luthi by Alfa Romeo. I did the deal for them.
Yeah, it's funny, they're a sort of constant touchpad through your career, aren't they, in terms of engines in the 70s and then, of course, the deal to sell to them.
What, you mean with...
With Alfa?
With Alfa.
Mm.
Yeah, when Kitty was there, it's another guy we got on very well. For good reason. He didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak Italian, so we got on like a house on fire.
Another person you got on well with, at least from a business point of view, Max Mosley.
Yeah.
What was the secret of your success as a partnership?
Well, we trusted each other completely. And I suppose we relied on each other doing what we were doing. I mean, Max would maybe hold me back from doing things sometimes that I was a little bit too early on in doing. And he'd slow me down a little bit. I've got a lot to be thankful for Max. Apart from being a super guy, he was a guy that would steer me, if necessary, in the right directions.
Did your different backgrounds ever prove an issue at all in your relationships?
Not at all.
Were you kind of good cop, bad cop? Is that fair?
No, not really. We would very together. We'd never have an argument, with people as if I didn't side in with him or vice versa. Mm. We had the same ideas. Max was a racer.
Well, so were you.
Yeah, it's a
great combo. Bernie,
He
what was...
still is. Max, he still thinks that way. He should have been the Prime Minister, actually. He'd have been a good Prime Minister.
Did you ever encourage him to...
Yeah, and I spoke to Mrs. Thatcher about this. I said, you should take him on board. And,
What did Mrs. Thatcher say to that?
well, she couldn't do much at the time.
Because of Max's father and history, or...?
Well, we'd got over all that. I'd spoken to a lot of people about that. Nobody seemed to care. I don't think that was a problem.
Bernie, what was your management style when you were running Formula One? A lot of people have said it's divide and conquer. Would you agree with that?
Not really. It was a case of trying to get everyone to sing from the same hymn sheet, to agree that maybe these ideas wasn't that cranky anyway. Let's give it a go. You can't suddenly, what people have said to me about this divide and conquer, because if you do that, all you've got is complete chaos, and you wouldn't be able to achieve anything then.
Do you think you were a confrontational boss? Did you enjoy the confrontation of taking on someone and anyone who disagreed with you? Or
I don't mind a bit of competition, but no, I don't think that ever came into it. I tried to, if I had ideas, I'd try to make sure that we put them through.
did your desire to make money ever come ahead of what was right for the sport?
No. But any money that was made for myself or the company or for the teams was done because we were doing the right thing. It was never the intention. If I was dealing with promoters, I'd always try to do the best deal I could. But it would be with the right people and good reasons for why we wanted to be with them.
And of course, in the mid-90s, with your digital TV effort, do you feel that that didn't work because you were ahead of your time?
Probably yes. With the 8 channels we had, people didn't make it work. The people that bought it from us, the French, I think, and the Germans, they really didn't believe it. They bought it but didn't believe it, so didn't get behind it.
Whereas, do you think if you'd introduced that 10 years later,
the
public may have been more accepting of it?
People are still talking about it today. Be able to buy a channel for onboard camera or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Same sort of thing.
Bernie, just a few more things. Money. When did you make your first million?
As strange as it may sound to you, I never bothered about making money. I made money because of things I had done or was doing. It was never in my intention to set out to do something to make money.
Do you know when that first million came along? Or
no, I don't. Honestly, I don't know.
No. Some people might say, oh, it was 1963, great train robbery.
Wasn't enough money on that train to make the million.
2.5 mil, wasn't it? Or something?
Was it 2.5 mil?
I think that's what they say, wasn't it? Not enough money.
So those days, yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was good publicity.
For you, yeah, yeah. Forbes magazine says you're worth 4.2 billion. Is that accurate?
4.2 billion what?
Pounds.
Pounds. I don't know how they know. They take the money out of the bank and count it, or what? I don't know. People speculate on these things, don't they?
Is it accurate, or...?
Is it accurate?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never bothered to check. The only concern I have at the moment is that the money doesn't run out before I die.
Are you spending quite quickly, or not?
No, maybe there isn't as much as you think.
Yeah. Bernie, what other sports are you interested in?
Tennis. I follow tennis.
Did you ever play?
No.
Is football something? Because, of course, you were a part owner of QPR for a while, Queen's Park Rangers.
Unfortunately, I was the owner, basically, or the biggest shareholder. Didn't interest me. As long as I owned the team, I never went to many games.
Why did you get involved?
By accident. Complete accident. Because Flavio Briatore said to me one day, there's a pizza restaurant, I think it was, that's for sale in London. I said, yeah. And he said, do you know anything about it? I said, I don't know, what's the name of it? And he said, QPR. I said, well, I've never heard of QPR as a pizza restaurant or anything. I said, let me find out. So, which I did. I said to him, well, it's not exactly a pizza restaurant. So he said to me, well, do you think any interest in buying it? Because it's for sale. And I've subsequently found out all about that it is a football club. And that's what happened. So I thought it sounded a good idea. So we jumped in.
Didn't go to any games, but did you enjoy the business side of it?
No.
Any parallels with running a Formula One team? No. There's just quite a lot of no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quite relieved to get rid of it in the end.
Yeah, we escaped intact without losing any money, which was a bit of a feat.
Yeah. Did
Flavio said, why don't we get involved? I've got a guy that I think would help marketing the team. It's the guy that's now running or started Formula E, Alexandra Gag. So we put Alexandra on board with us to come up with some ideas, and didn't come up with many of those days. Subsequently he has and done very well, but he didn't do very well for us in football.
No. Any other sports? Eddie Jordan told me once that you had a few horses in training, or greyhounds.
Horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got horses in training? Race horses?
Not anymore.
Okay. So it's tennis.
It's another thing like football for me. I think I must have had close on 10 horses. And I went, I think, to maybe 3 races.
Did they win?
But yeah, I had Mr. Frankie Dettori rode for us and won a couple of races. Yeah, we did average.
Did you get quite a buzz out of owning a horse, winning with it? Frankie riding for you? No. Did you?
I was happy to have Frankie with us.
Yeah. Keen on the betting side?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether people do bet on their own horses. They think they know, but they never do.
When you look back at it all, Bernie, the biggest thing you got right in your career?
The biggest thing that I got right? I probably getting Formula One on television in the way that, which was a bit of a battle because it was against all the television broadcasters. So I was very happy that not only did we manage to succeed, but it worked.
Anything you regret?
What I regret? Probably something I want to forget, and I can't remember what it was.
What about the 2005 US Grand Prix at Indianapolis? The problems with Michelin and only a 6-car race, and crikey, when you look back at that, anything you'd have done differently, or anything that particularly frustrates you even now when you think back to that weekend?
Yeah, it was Max's decision, which I thought was the wrong decision to make.
Max's to just go ahead.
No, not to. I mean, the way the whole thing was conducted, I thought was a little bit wrong. I mean, Max and I never argued about things. But in this case, I said, well, it could be another way. You know? Don't need to do that. And Max was completely right about people know where they're going to race and what tyres they should be on and whatever. So it was really one of those where Max is very good, gets stuck into something which he thinks is right and doesn't back off.
But do you regret not putting a chicane in that would have allowed the Michelin runners to race? Or?
Yeah, I'm just saying that there was a million things we could have done. Not exactly a million, but quite a lot. Yeah.
It was a stressful moment on the grid. Did you believe then, did you know then on the grid that the Michelin runners were going to pull off after the parade lap, or were you still hoping even then that the race would go ahead?
No, it was me that suggested that's what they should do.
To pull over, pull into the pit?
Yeah.
Okay. Most stressful time of your career?
I think I've had hundreds. I've had lots of things happen which have been stressful at the time. Nothing in particular to say, well, this was the most stressful.
Now, it's been 20 years since you had your heart op. Can you remember what symptoms you had prior to that?
No, I was walking and I had a pain in the chest. Went home and said to my ex at the time, I'm going to just lay down for a bit, which he knew I wouldn't do in the afternoons, something like that. Called the doctor and he said I had to have a test. And that's what happened. I had a test and then eventually they thought I had a bypass.
And how's the ticker now? Has it
Still working.
But you feel you look in rude health.
I have a checkup. I should more often, but I get put in the tube and they have a look and see what's going on.
And was it concern over the ticker that prompted you to sell in the first place?
To sell what?
The sport.
Oh, I didn't sell. I gave bloody shares to my ex, who put everything in a trust, and the trust decided that Formula One wasn't the right thing for them as the trustees, and they were the ones that sold.
But it was the health scare that prompted all that.
Early on.
Yeah,
because I was going to die for sure. And I was told no discussion about it.
The wife was telling you, or not?
And disappointed a lot of people, huh?
Selling or
no, not dying.
Not. I'm sure that's not true. Bernie, what about a knighthood?
Knighthood?
Yeah. Would you?
Don't particularly agree with these things.
Okay. I was going to say, are you disappointed at any level that you haven't been knighted? If you think what you've done for motorsport, for jobs in the UK.
I think 20 odd years ago I was given the opportunity and decided not to.
You turned a knighthood down?
Yeah.
Why did you turn it down?
Really because I don't think doing things that I've done deserve any acknowledgement from anyone. I mean, all the things I've done, I didn't set off to do something good for the country. If by chance it happened, I did do something good for the country, good, but it wasn't my intention.
Mm. Would you like to see Lewis knighted? Lewis Hamilton?
Well, there's no reason why he shouldn't be. I mean, he's done a great job for England, for sure. On the other hand, like myself, he never set out to do something good for England. He set out to do something good for what he wanted to do. And but I mean, there are lots of occasions where people do try to do things for the country and don't benefit from it financially. They benefit perhaps that they have done something good.
So final question, what's your legacy?
Don't have one.
Really? You think you don't have a legacy?
I would disappear and be forgotten within a few months like most people. Nobody remembers something. The world moves on. New people, new things happen. And I mean, the world is moving so quick now to what it used to, maybe 20 years ago even, that it's easy for people to sort of march on for new things, new ideas.
Well, Bernie, on that note, thank you very much for your time. Lovely to chat.
Thank you.
It takes a brave man to leave Bernie stranded on top of a mountain as Jochen Rindt did. But actually, I'm only joking when I say that, because this chat proved to me that Bernie is human. He does have a sense of humour. He does have a sense of perspective. And he's able to laugh at himself, as proven by his description of the symptoms of his heart problem 20 years ago. He's throttling back these days, spending his money and enjoying himself while still coming to a few races each year. And why not? Bernie, thanks for your time. It was great to catch up. Well, that's it for another episode, and while the Formula One season may be over, we'll still be back next week with a guest you will not want to miss. I promise you, it's a beauty. As ever, I want to say thanks for your feedback about last week's episode with Rubens Barrichello. The man's a legend, and he didn't disappoint in his storytelling, revealing some tremendous anecdotes from his record-breaking career in Formula One. Andrew Milicki got in touch via Twitter to say this: "Loved the recent episode with Rubens. The inside stories and that bombshell offer from McLaren were amazing, with the cameo from Ross Brawn being the cherry on top. Thanks for getting me through my daily commute." Well, thanks, Andrew. And if you try and tell me that you weren't laughing out loud when Rubens recounted the story of having dinner with Ayrton Senna in Adelaide, I won't believe you. As ever, please keep your feedback coming because we love it and share it. Remember to use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid, and you can tweet me at Tom Clarkson F1. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.